First picture, just for something to look at while I'm rabbiting in the corner. I did do a bit of an introduction because Viv said I ought to in case somebody or anybody doesn't know who I am. I'm chief coach for the Condors and I've been flying. Richard got the numbers slightly wrong. I did have a quick think. I've been flying for the best part of 50 years. So 20 years was out a bit, mate. Just a quick fun fact, if anybody's interested, hang glider. I bought my first hang glider. It cost me £98 and that included the harness. Just to give you an idea of how geriatric it was and how long ago it was. The harness, of course, was only a plastic swing seat and about 6 feet of blue polypropylene rope, but that's a whole new story. I've had numerous gliders over the years, got into winch towing more recently, or in my hang gliding life. Then got my microlight license to tow the hang gliders, then got power units for the hang glider and flew them, and then eventually moved on to paragliding. I've held most of the offices in the club more than once over the years. I taught Viv to fly 20 years ago, so my school has 100% success rate. One pupil, but absolutely 100%. And most recently, if people don't know, I had a catastrophic flying accident in 2012, was off work for 3 years, off flying for 5, and was seriously debating whether I'd come back to flying. But of course, the problem was that Viv didn't stop flying. So all I had was Viv's going flying. Well, that's just fantastic. What the hell am I going to do? So anyway, having had a long and deep think about it, decided I'd come back to flying, got hold of Brad at Snowdonia, who promptly sent me a new glider and a harness and said, here you are, give it a blast, And it's been fantastic coming back. I've had some of the nicest flying recently, or since being back. I mean, everything's changed. The gliders are better. The instruments are better. So it's been absolutely fantastic. So one thing I was going to say to finish off my intro is that if anybody can relate to getting back into flying, I mean, we worry about the COVID 1 year. For some people, maybe slightly longer, maybe less. I had 5 years, and that was one hell of a break. So if anybody's got any problems with getting their heads around being nervous and worried, I mean, I was nervous and worried. But, once I sorted it out, went to Woolacombe, had a cracking day and back to where I started, really. But I thought I'd just do that as an intro so you know who I am, if people don't know who I am. But so I've been around quite a long time. The first slide on the talk, as I say, just the intro back in the air. And as Richard stole my thunder, I was going to laugh at Jockey for stealing our title, but of course, he spoiled the joke. This is Bossington. I do mention Bossington later in the talk in terms of sites to fly, which are nice and easy and mellow and perfect places to start again. This is a view looking straight out. Viv's in the foreground. As you can see, loads of landing areas. The field below comes and goes the landing area, but you can land out all along the beach. There's this really endless choices. It's a big hill. We've got some more photographs later on of the hill itself, but that's just a nice intro shot. So if I go on, this is basically behind where I was down the coast. So you've got North Hill looking towards Bossington. Bossington is the little kink in the coast where the sea tucks in. And this is another glorious site. As I say, North Hill is an absolutely beautiful place to fly. But what I wanted to say on this one, as I've got on the text, I've got text on each of the slides and an odd humorous picture. We've tried to make it quite lighthearted. I obviously don't know who's done what. Some people might have flown when we flew yesterday, and we flew over Christmas and New Year, so we've been relatively lucky. But I mean, some people might have lots of experience and not flown for a while, no experience and flown recently, or not flown for a while. So it could be anybody. But the idea with the talk was really just to give people pointers as to what they can do, how they can get back into it, and trying to be more positive rather than lots of don'ts, more like lots of do's. So you can do this, you will do it, you can cope with it. So hopefully a sort of positive look at it rather than everybody painting all the negative. Oh, well, what about if? So we'll see how we get on. Anyway, as Richard said, we've got questions at the end and we can discuss anything anybody's got that they're worried about. And if I can just make sure I don't mess up this presentation, it'll be marvelous. First picture, basically, it says at home, but obviously this is our local repack in our village hall. But things you can do at home, really, quite a lot, really, because you can check all your gear. As I've listed there, have a hang in your harness. Does everything look right, feel right as you last remember it? And before I go on instruments, this really means that you can play about and really take your time checking it, because it's not like on a hill where everybody's desperate to fly and you're watching people taking off. You can sit there and you can fiddle with things, straps, clean your harness out, because we've cleaned ours out. And you'll find leaves and sand and sticks and grit and rubbish in all the little seams and gaps and holes that you never knew existed. So if you've got whatever harness you've got, unzip everything, have a good poke around, because this is when you find things have rubbed or worn or scuffed, or, you know, again, you're not under pressure. So do as much checking as you really want to do, you know, feel happy to do. Likewise, your instruments, check them all. Read the manuals if you've forgotten what they do, how they work, play with them, practice them. GPSs, go out on your bike, have a rider in the countryside, just to remind yourself of what tracks are shown, how you can change screens. Again, there's so many choices that you really can't be too specific. But again, because you're not on the hill, this is the time to check things, and because nobody's saying, oh, you're missing 10 minutes of epic flying, or everybody else has taken off and you're missing out. But that's how I would see the first introduction to it. Now, parachute packing. This is fun and games. I packed mine the other day. Viv's just scattered hers all over the lounge. So it's now draped over the settee. So we're hoping it's not going to be any good the rest of the week, because obviously we're going to rush and pack her chute. Again, people get, over the years, people have got quite nervous about repacking chutes. If it's due to be repacked and you want it repacked, you've got two choices. We can't do a repack at the moment, obviously. So you either got to send it off, or you do, if you're confident and you've got a manual, do it yourself. Your choice. We were on the Southeast Wales AGM last night, and interestingly, Steve Milson and Ali Andrews, who have been doing lots of repacks, surprised me by saying they had quite a few failures. Which, I mean, we've done repacks for years, and we had a few failures the first few years, and we hadn't had any for a long time. So when I quizzed him on it, he said that it was stupid things like the lines being tangled, and people had repacked the bag in the wrong deployment bag, and for some reason tangled things up. We've had all these incidents, but we thought we'd ironed them out within the club, but they're obviously getting people sending in their stuff. And he was surprised that they had the failures they did. So up to you, really. If you're at all worried, if it's something else that's going to phase you or put you off, then stick it in the post to Steve, because he's really nice, really good guy. Right, okay, sorry, I'm just trying to think where I'm going. I'll have to check my notes as I'm going to make sure I'm not missing anything. As I say, anybody wants to shout, they don't understand what I'm talking about, please feel free. Next stage really is the ground handle, if you've got the space. I mean, I spoke to Andrew, and he's quite happy for me to publicize the fact that you can use any of his sites, training sites, to ground handle. Obviously let him know first, but he couldn't really say no, because most of the club members have been trained by him anyway, so it'd be a bit churlish, wouldn't it, really? I mean, but we went down to our local playing fields, huge playing field, messing about, just, you know, like you do ground handling. Practice as much as you can, set yourself a few little tasks, running about, just generally get back into the feel of how the glider feels. I mean, you can practice ground handling for ages. I'm afraid I don't do anywhere near enough ground handling. It's a case of it looks lovely, we've pre-flighted everything, I want to fly, you know, but that's just personal preference. Right, the night before, this is a slide just for Richard. This is one of this is the humorous one. Night before, check the forecast, decide who you're going to go with, speak to them. Decide on your sites, give yourself some choices. Pack your kit, check everything, radio charge, vario, all the standard stuff. Get into the sort of way of checking everything as you would hopefully planning to go flying regularly. Now, the clothing choice was an added comment. Viv said, get Richard to describe it, but I thought probably rude, so I won't do that.
No, get Richard. Richard should give you the why.
Yeah.
This picture is not a good idea.
Yeah.
Richard.
Right, there you are, Richard. I'm sorry, I couldn't get out of it.
I've still got the scars. So the scars. My first visit to Bosington, and I've been using a pod for some time. So really nice to fly in shorts when the weather's nice. So I turn up at Bossington, and what do I do first of all is I manage to drape my wing over the gorse. Do not go in gorse with shorts. Fran was picking little spikes out of me for days afterwards. Not a good idea.
Don't fly in shorts. I don't fly in shorts, just to add my story.
They're not my legs, by the way.
No, I was just going to say, they're not Richard's legs. No, sorry.
I don't fly in shorts. I fly in zip-offs. And the one time I decided I would fly in shorts, we flew at Woolacombe. Conditions went strange. I didn't make the green, and I went into head-high brambles. Leicester very kindly came and dug me out, and my legs looked like, well, you wouldn't believe, probably like Richard's did when he got home. But there you go. Don't fly in shorts ever.
It is a serious, and Bossington is lovely, but it does have knee-high, waist-high gorse. And odds law, as Richard said, you'll end up in it, no matter how careful you are. But another one, trials and tribulations. First flight, be realistic, be honest with yourself. I don't know where this quote came from, but I think it's a cracking quote. Be the pilot you are, not the one you want to be. Be honest with yourself. Nobody's judging you. You're only going flying. You're only going flying for fun. So as I say, try not to do anything silly. Be happy to ask for advice and be happy to wait. I mean, not go to sleep necessarily on the hill and miss all the flying, but I mean, you can if you want to. Site choice. Choose an easy site, less busy site. Probably a comp in Annecy. I think it was the Europeans, with hundreds of gliders, but racing around the lake is probably not the best place, but it's a lovely photograph and it's glorious sunshine, so what the hell. And again, as I say, pick easy sites. I know we keep hammering on about it, but really we've got two beautiful sites, Woolacombe in North Devon or Bossington. I mean, Woolacombe is probably the best site anywhere to get back into flying. It's literally obstacle free, acres of top landing, acres of bottom landing, and invariably glassy smooth. So I mean, I'd always plump for that. That's where I went after my 5-year layoff. And I mean, first day out was just check the canopy, inflate it, troll off and fly for hours. And it's just gorgeous. Don't let people put you off. You know, you get it. I've noticed it at Avon, at Westbury. I've noticed it, even noticed it at Bell yesterday. You get a huddle of people who sit on the hill and talk each other out of flying. And it's so frustrating to hear them. You think, well, perfect conditions, and you're just going to persuade everybody around you within earshot that it's not quite right. So try and be with or ask people who appear to be knowledgeable, obviously coaches or people you know who are going to give you an honest answer. Right, observation on the day, more humorous photographs. This is a local pilot who got the gorse wrong at Bossington, caused us endless entertainment. This is one of the photographs. Viv's been rooting out all the old photographs that could provide a bit of entertainment. But again, look around as I've got some notes here, look around the hills, see what the pilots are doing. You can learn a lot about the day. You might also be able to help others. And even experienced pilots make mistakes. So I'll just as an example, I went to the Malverns years ago, hang gliding. Richard's been to the Malverns once, I think, to have a look for the paragliding side. This was way back in the day of loads of hang gliders, hill covered in hang gliders, just like it would be paragliders now. I got there, was wandering around, nattering to people, just glanced across, guy going to take off, carrying forward, 2 wingmen and a noseman. I looked over at him, just passing glance, see what his takeoff looks like. And I thought, it doesn't look right. And I thought, now he's obviously just checking the wind. He's going to put the glider down. It's on the bottom bar, if people know how hang gliders take off. Picked the glider up, looked around, and I thought he's going to go. So I bellowed as loud as I possibly could. I won't repeat the exact language, but basically you're not clipped in. And just started to run and got to him to see him stood there, absolutely white as a sheet. And his noseman and wingman just looked, and he hadn't done a hang check. They've been so busy talking, you know, geeing each other up. The weather looked good. People were flying. He rushed forward and he went, put the glider down, walked back. And I don't think he was actually ill, but I think he spent a long time thinking about what the hell he'd done. But
Can
that's
you
an
explain from a hang glider's point of view for people who don't know what a hang check is and how you do it?
Yeah, basically with a hang glider, if you've seen a hang glider fly, you're suspended from behind you rather than in front of you, which are on paragliders. You've got one carabiner and a backup, but obviously you can't see it from your flying position. So the idea is you carry to wherever you're going to take off. Noseman or wingman hold the glider. You then drop into prone. So you're in your flying position, and then they can check the carabiners are correctly attached, and you can feel that obviously you are attached. But none of the guys, 3 guys and the pilot, and nobody checked. And that was
So
on
what
busy.
would have been the result? As he'd taken off,
He'd have
he
died.
would have
He'd have died.
he would have dropped from
Yeah.
through the A-frame. He might have been able to hold on to the A-frame
Yeah.
for
Well, people have said you can hold on, but there've been a lot more stories of people not holding on. And I certainly wouldn't have. I wouldn't be able to hold on with my hands, take my weight on a little bit of aluminium tubing. But again, this is not supposed to be a doom and gloom thing. It's the story of looking around, just picking up on what people are doing. You know, you might learn something, you might be able to help, you know. Right, assess the wind conditions. We have this lovely picture, and this is Viv's name, not mine. I'm not, don't blame. Viv decided it's a Leicester-meter, which is an absolutely perfect. I thought it was absolutely great. But
Lester can tell us where it is. When was this, Lester? Where is it?
I can't remember.
He can't remember. It was Westward Ho, mate.
Oh, right. Yeah.
But in all,
I've still got that bag.
Really? Well, as I said earlier, we were
flying suit.
Exactly. Yeah. But we were trying to make it a bit not too light-hearted, but a bit entertaining as well. So basically, assess your site conditions before you go any further. Wind speed, wind direction, all the usual stuff. We were just discussing this last night, having been to Bell yesterday. We were amazed at the number of people trying to take off fairly high up the hill when it was windy. And, you know, Sean was telling people to go down the front. We went way down the front, and it was perfect. But people were getting dragged about, and there's a row of parked cars. And again, poor assessment, really, because somebody could have hurt themselves for no good reason at all, because it was a beautiful day's flying. But be aware and make sure you know what's around you, what's happening. Pre-flight on the day. Right, so you've already checked your harness before, but again, check it all again. You probably haven't had a chance to check your glider properly. I did hear a rumor that somebody went flying. Was it Tosh who went flying and the mice had eaten a hole in his glider?
Oh, I don't know.
I think it was Tosh, wasn't it? It was on the South East Wales group, I think. But again, if you do a pre-flight hill like this, I mean, you can spend as long as you want. You're not in a hurry. You can lay your glider out, double check, treble check everything. You've got to be happy that everything's as you want it to be. This is actually Black Hill in the Scottish borders, which was a lovely site. Right, let's go on from there. Checklist. Have simple rules that suit you and you can remember. I mean, if you don't want to follow the official BHPA rules, something like if you've got your harness or your helmet on, everything must be done up. If you undo your harness, take it off. Don't wander about with it unclipped, because you know what will happen. And there's plenty of videos on YouTube showing exactly what happens if you mess about without a harness done up. Old designs, the leg loops, there's loads of ways you could fail with the leg loops. Nowadays, hopefully they're all pretty sound. You've got no problems. And one other little incident that might be worth mentioning at Pandy. Years ago, we were there. It was breezy. I think most of us were sat behind the wall until it started to look a bit better, and I wandered out and got my glider out. This guy turned up, didn't know him from Adam. I was rigging at the back, out of the way, because I thought there's no rush, nobody else there. He ran to the front, looked at me, threw his glider down, all his gear. Yes, whoopee, great, fantastic. So I carried on checking everything, just getting ready. And he was obviously in a hell of a hurry with his flash enclosed harness and his fairly high spec glider, I thought at the time. He then got all ready. I glanced around. I heard this sort of strangled grunt as I saw the glider and the harness float upwards, and he sat on the takeoff. And the glider executed a lovely 180 and disappeared over the back. And he was just, oh. And what do you say? You just, you were in a hurry, you pushed in, you weren't going to wait for anybody else. Everybody else was out of sight. You were going to be first. Away we go. And that was not trying to depress you.
All he'd done is actually fasten up his flight deck.
Yeah.
He hadn't clipped up any of the straps of his harness. Fastened his flight deck, that was it.
Yeah. So as soon as your weight came on it, you just slid elegantly out the back. And, it was probably okay, luckily, because it was so breezy that it literally pulled off of him rather than him having to run and take off, which is probably what saved him, really, because I wouldn't want to fall down the front of Pandy, that's for sure. Right. This is the official BHPA mnemonic, if people want to use it. This is the owner of the legs at Bossington. And I think the face says it all. Is it still there? Have I done everything? Am I actually flying? Oh, yes. But this is John Fielder, if nobody knows. He was a bit of a strange guy we had flying years ago. Very nice bloke, slightly idiosyncratic, but, And as I say, everybody probably knows the BHPA mnemonic. And as I say, if you want to be guided by that, fine. But whatever suits you, but just careful checking at all times is all I can really recommend. Takeoff. This is Stanage Edge in the Peak District. Lovely site, but we were talking when we put this together, we were saying about looking at potential hazards. So, I mean, you've got a potential hazard on this site. You've got quite a few. Most of the people in the picture are climbers rather than spectators because they do an awful lot of climbing along Stanage. So when you fly along it, you can hear this constant tink, tink, tink of hammers and pins being driven in and God knows what else.
We don't drive pins in.
Well, whatever.
It's traditional climbing at Stanage. It's brilliant.
Yeah, I think it probably is. It's not very big, so you can do that. That's right. But this is Helen Gant, one of our British hero paragliding pilot, really amazing pilot, lovely lady. But you can see there as a potential hazards, you've got a sheer rock edge or rock face right behind her. You can see the edge is literally there. So the main things would be, obviously, don't cut your takeoff off, but also you're going to get rotor there as well. So make sure you've got the canopy properly flying because you've got very little space to change your mind. But having said that, it's a nice takeoff and it's not normally a problem. But again, if it was windier, you'd get more rotor and not so good. In the air. Right, so you've gone to your site, you've made your decision, and you're actually airborne. So, right, you've got to decide what you want to do now, obviously having had a flight plan anyway, but, you don't know that until you've actually got to the position where you're in a position to make a decision. Top to bottom or soaring. That's the two choices, really. Other traffic, are you happy you can cope in traffic as you haven't flown for 6 months or a year? And also remember, others in the air could be rusty and could be nervous. So in a situation like this, if you took off and found yourself here and you were really rusty, I'd probably be tempted to fly out in front of everybody else and play about if you can stay up, or even do top to bottoms, or just to get your head round flying when it's busy again. But this, just meant to make a note of which sites are which so people know. This is Talibont in Wales, so a big site, long walk up, but a very nice site. So nothing else I wanted to say on that, I don't think. No, that's again another very pretty site, but potential hazards again. This is the south coast, Beerhead to Branscombe. As I say, a glorious day, really beautiful. But again, even a perfect flying day, you've got orographic forming, textbook, but that orographic can change. It could suddenly drop onto the hill. So where are you going to go if the orographic drops 300 feet? Go to the beach. But be aware that if you could be sailing back to top land, and as you get to top landing disappeared in the cloud. So again, even the nicest, prettiest sites, always try and be aware that you must have somewhere to go, have a plan, decide what you're going to do if you can't do what you originally planned to do. Another spot the hazard, discuss. Again, this was in the lakes, I think, Jenkin, that's right, just double checking the slides. This is Jenkin, again, in the lakes. I mean, Simon's going to be going to the lakes again, so he's got this footage, so is Richard. But it's a lovely site, but also if it's a good thermal, you're going to get to cloud base, you could get to cloud base quite quickly. So you've got to be aware of what you're doing, who's around. If people don't know, best to use the 45-degree rule, which is basically when you're when you're in the area with an angle of 45 degrees to the cloud, then head out to the side of the cloud. Hopefully, theory is it gives you enough time to fly to the edge of the cloud before you get hoofed into it. But of course, that depends on the cloud. Now, Viv will tell you we had a lovely day at Bell years and years ago, where a lot of us were boating around late into the evening, and there was this one last cumulus cloud, and it was just like a bell. And we were up inside the bell, just circling around with this beautiful cloud hanging down around us, which was pretty impressive, but strictly speaking, probably contravened a number of rules. Right, flight plan, landing. This is one of my more precise spot landings. This is the lifeboat. This is the lifeboat station at Clovelly. If you fly Westward Ho, you can fly from Westward Ho right down the coast to Clovelly. But then this was where I landed, just in case you were worried. But the lifeboat, the actual building of the lifeboat is the top of that slope, and there's a pub right across the beach. But again, not a problem if you've planned it, you're expecting it. And of course, if you fly Clovelly or fly Westward Ho, as you go more west, you're also going more into wind. So you're actually flying along the coast, but there's a lot of parallel component in the wind. So you're almost heading into wind. So you can literally boat down the coast and just land on the beach wherever you want. So I just got to Clovelly and landed on the beach near the pub, But you can land anywhere, but obviously plan your landings again. If you're not happy, pick a big field. If you're very confident, put a spot landing down and have a play about it and just practice. If you're not sure, put a spot landing in a big field and work out why you can't get there. But wherever you land, same rules apply. Plan your approach and also look out for any obstacles. Usual thing, power lines, anything that might impede your landing. And as you say, if you're not confident, stick to places with loads of landing options, which is why I want to show this really. You would not be sending anybody down there to land who wasn't 100% happy. They can land on their chosen pebble, basically. Flight plan landing again. That's right. Again, you could change in the air. If the conditions are good, you decide you're not going to have a top to bottom, you're going to soar, so you're going to have a top landing. So again, you pick your top landing. This is a nice top landing, plenty of people flying. This is Long Mountain, and obviously the gliders are still relatively low, but the sky's looking good. It's obviously probably fairly early, and people will be disappearing quite quick because it's, I say, a classic looking sky on a very nice site. But there, the top landing, the guy's just landed across the front of the hill, nobody else there, all the time in the world, and probably just going to stand there, have a quick think about it and take off again. But again, plan everything. Try not to get yourself boxed into a corner, whether it's top landing or bottom landing. And a debrief, another picture. This is where Lester's going to consult somebody who knows a bit about flying. For those who don't know, this was our long deceased Yorkshire Terrier, Riley, who used to come out and enjoy tearing after everybody. But in all seriousness, have an honest debrief with yourself. Did your takeoff go as you planned? Yes, no. If not, why not? Was the flight exactly as you planned? If not, why not? And likewise the landing. Not, oh, well, it was near enough, or oh, well, it'll do, or oh, it wasn't really a mistake. Oh, I didn't really misjudge that. Well, probably you did, I say, if not, why not? And as I say, debrief with somebody useful, and somebody who's seen you perhaps might be quite useful. And that's the end of my talk, which is basically, this is in beer billing in India. And this is sort of decision time. You decide that it's probably best to burn off a few grand now because the Himalayas are under that cloud and it's coming towards me at a rate of knots. And I've got about 5 grand to burn off. But nice, pretty picture. So as I say, this was the time to head for the bar before conditions deteriorated. So any questions?
Yeah, thanks, Phil. That was great.
Thanks, Phil.
I didn't want to make it too long. I'd rather get questions about things rather than just go around in circles. And
yeah, can we just have the screen back so we can each see each other?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
You've always got to ask a technical question, haven't you? I mean, I can manage everything else. Stop sharing. How's that?
There we
Perfect.
go.
Perfect. So, who's got a question?
I've stumped
Simon.
everybody. Right. Yes.
Phil, you said about
going up to Cumbria, you
Yeah.
said the 45-degree rule.
Yeah.
I assume that's when you're coming up to cloud base and your options of getting out the side of the cloud before you end up getting in the cloud.
Yeah, exactly. If you're coming up under a perfectly formed cumulus cloud, and if you get within literally 45 degrees of that center of the cloud, you want to be heading out to the edge of the cloud, whichever way you want to go. If you're going to go cross country, then you'd head obviously downwind, but basically try and avoid getting in there, because that's going to be the strongest part of the cloud. And obviously, if you get stuck, and
I did wonder, and I thought, well, I'll just check anyway.
No, that's fine. That's the point of doing this, really. I mean, we don't normally. There's so many other variables. I mean, if the clouds aren't very big, and it's the same argument, if the clouds are taller than they are wide, tend to treat them with respect. But if you've got little white puffy clouds, then I wouldn't worry too much about the 45-degree rule, because you can see all. If you can see all around them, and you can literally see over the top of them, or you can see the top of them, and they don't look anything nasty, then don't be too shy of them, because obviously you lose out. If you don't get the cloud base, you don't get the maximum height you want. You know, everybody gets the cloud base, just don't go in it, and don't go where you might get hoovered into it when you don't have a choice, you know. Otherwise you're into fast descent methods, and nobody likes doing that. It's not much fun.
Yeah. I mean, I have been watching on Telegram I don't know, I'm on 5 or 6 groups, and it was pretty horrendous after the first lockdown, and the amount of people that were getting hurt for stupid mistakes. Trying to ground handle uphill when they haven't ground handled for months and twisting ankles. So I've been watching it. Definitely looks like people are taking a little bit more notice and taking it a bit more serious this time, which is good to see.
I think we've had the winter, and I think because people have got into Zoom and they've got into talks like this and other discussions, it's a really good time, because you can pick the brains of other people, and it doesn't have to be experienced pilots necessarily. It can be people who are familiar with their own local site, even if they don't have a huge number of hours. And so you can ask people, and you've got time. What we've missed through the last year is being able to socialize, sit and have coffee, sit in the pub and chat about the day. And that's all gone, because people have gone to the hill, they've flown, and then they've gone home, and we haven't been able to get together. Whereas using things like Zoom, you can get together, and we've got time to answer questions and discuss things. And I think that's helped. And I think gradually people are getting the message across that take your time. You have to take your time with this. I mean, Phil's been flying, like he said, for 50 years. I've been flying for 20, and I'm the slowest pilot in the world. I mean, I am so conservative with my flying, it's unbelievable. But because I'm very conscious of my confidence, if you start this in your, well, like Phil, he started when he was like 17, 18. I started in my 40s, but you can be in this for the long haul. It's a sport you can be doing. Like Derek Sadler, who was one of the Wessex pilots, he died, and I think he was 88 and he was still flying. John OJ, who flies Branscombe, and he only flies Branscombe now, really. He's in his 80s. He's been flying for years. If you take your time, you don't bash yourself up, you can be enjoying paragliding for a very long time. It's not something you need to rush at. You really can just trundle along. Doesn't matter how old you are, you can do what you can do. You can get off the ground, even if it's only top drivable sites. You can have a lot of fun, but just take it a bit slow. That's all.
I went out in the field at the front of me, ground handling it. It's not a good field to do it because there's lots of slopes, you get lots of rotor. It was too windy to be out there, but it was probably 9 to 12 mile an hour with 16 mile an hour gusts. And I thought this is going to be pretty interesting, and it's good to go out there and do it, because when you've got gusts coming through like that, you can get picked up and dumped so fast. I mean, I get the wing up and it's plucked me off the ground, it's spun me round, I'm dumped, I've killed the wing, great. The next time the wing's gone up, it's not inflating properly because there's a low. But to go out there and do some ground handling when it is a bit too strong, it does let you know what that wing will get up to if it's too gusty. And if you're on a hill and you think, I can launch in this, and you're not prepared,
Yeah.
you will get yourself in some serious trouble. So definitely go out and do some ground handling before you go.
Yeah.
I mean, I love it. I have great fun out there, but it's like you say, you've got to keep it up to date. You've got to keep your ground handling.
Yeah.
I think that's just as important as flying myself.
I mean, lots of people spend an inordinate amount of time ground handling. As I say, we were at Bell yesterday and somebody was messing about, running around between all the balled up gliders, jumping up and down, just hopping and skipping, which I thought was going the opposite way, which I thought was just irresponsible and stupid. But he would say he was practicing his ground handling. But I'm afraid I'm not keen on too much ground handling, because if it's flyable, I want to fly. But as Simon said, you can practice a lot. And rather be caught out in your private field or a playing field being dragged, making complete tits of yourself, rather than in front of everybody else on the hill. If you can master higher wind takeoffs, you know, everybody struggles with canopies when it's windy or gusty, because basically they're just sheets. But I mean, if you can just tidy up how your glider responds and have a technique that allows you to ground handle comfortably without risking anything. I mean, the problem we've always said, like any site, is that people spread their gliders all over the hill behind you, and you're then inflating at the front. I think Viv's favorite expression was to anybody behind her, "I'm glad you're confident in my ground handling, because I could be over your glider in a second," when somebody dumps their glider straight behind takeoff and the wind's blowing through, and away, you know, somebody makes a mistake and they're dragged through everybody's glider, which is why I always tend to rig over to one side, slightly upwind and off to one side of behind takeoff. So anybody who's going to go is going to go away from my glider, you know, but that's personal preference, you know.
I had an
point.
incident yesterday, and it was
Yeah.
a very minor one. We dumped our gliders at the top when we finished. We stopped just to have some lunch at the top of the hill. People were going well down the hill to launch, and I didn't realise I'd bunched my glider, put it down, and I was putting my harness on, picked up my harness, was just clipping in, and somebody, I could have smacked him, was down to my left, and for some reason decided that he would try and launch there. He put his wing up in the air, he got oiked off his feet and pulled over me, shouted at me. So I looked up and turned my head, and as I turned my head, all the whole glider, all the lines went over, missed me, apart from the stabilo line, which went across over my head and on my neck. And as I turned my head, it caught under my glasses, under my sunglasses, and straight across my eye. And I dropped my head and it came off as he was then carted up the field. I don't know if anybody's ever seen what happens with these lines, but I was lucky because it hurt my eye, and I took off again, and my eye was watering so much that I ended up landing, but it was the end of the day. Somebody got dragged across me years and years ago, and I had a flying suit on and a pair of gloves. The line melted my suit and melted my gloves. So you want to try and position yourself out the way of anybody who is actually taking off, because if you get lines around you, and Phil's got a story about somebody who had a line around his neck, didn't he?
Yeah.
What was the tale with Robin?
It was. We went to the Puy de Dôme in southern France, and we're flying from the volcano, which was fantastic. There was a hang glider pilot stood chatting, and there was a paraglider pilot, as Viv said, inflating, bit on the breezy side. Wasn't confident, got whipped off his feet, and it was a guy called Robin Campbell. He was just turned round, and as Viv said with her eye, this guy's lines just went over his head and round his neck as he was getting towed up the hill, and he had quite a welt. Luckily, everybody sat on the glider, and it was only for a fraction of a second. But if that had carried on, I dread to think what happened, because one of the thin lines around your neck and really underload could be, I mean, seriously bad.
It's like a cheese wire.
Yeah,
They cut and just don't. And
if
don't ever run for anybody's wing.
No, if anybody ever, sorry, go on.
Kill the fabric, not the lines.
Yeah. If you ever want to help anybody,
Go for a tip.
You go for the tip. You can jump on the sail, but don't touch the lines unless you've got really thick gloves on. Don't even think about touching the lines, because we had John Milner, one of our old hang glider pilots, grab somebody's lines. I think it was at West Bay years ago, and he cut all his fingers in all the digits, just by the lines running through it. I mean, really hurt him badly just because he put his hand down to try and steady somebody's wing. Grab the sail, jump on it, or say sorry.
Just let them be dragged past you.
That's right. It sounds horrible. You don't want to be unhelpful, but you don't want to chop your hands off.
No, you don't.
That's cheerful, isn't it?
Yeah,
That's
on to
miserable.
other stuff. So who? I mean, we know what the Fouracres have been up to. Who else has now been flying post this lockdown? Jerry,
air.
James, Maggie,
Little bit.
Helen. So, how was it for you, my dears? Who
I
was?
went ground handling on Sunday at Far Away and just happened to gently flutter into the sky.
We won't tell anybody.
But there were loads out and about. I went specifically to go ground handle, but was doing what Phil said, running around like a lunatic, and then took off.
Did you
Nice
have a
flight?
nice flight?
No, it was short. It was just a couple of hops. I wasn't
right.
supposed to be flying. I was in my old ring, old harness, all that sort of stuff.
Oh right, okay.
It was specifically just ground handling.
What about you, Maggie? I'm just looking at people as a. So
I,
was Westbury your first post-lockdown flight?
Yes, it was. And my first flight of this year, and I've never been to Westbury on White Horse before. So I took my wing. I was going to do a bit of ground handling, have a good recce. There were lots of people there. So I thought, there'll be lots of help around. So I did some ground handling. That went quite well. I was there with another friend, a guy called Tim. There's loads of Tims in
Oh yeah, it's common as
Yeah,
much.
hundreds.
Well,
a land
Westbury,
of the
yeah.
Tims, isn't it? Anyway.
Yeah, if you want some help, you just shout Tim.
Yes, great. And so because the ground handling had gone quite well, I was moving the wing forward anyway because the wind had gone off a little bit towards the back of the hill. So I was moving forward to get a little bit more breeze so that I could get my wing up. And I just thought, well, it's okay. I'll just do a quick top to bottom, and because I just thought, that was my plan. So I thought if it's takeoffable, I'll take off and I'll do a top to bottom, and that'll be me done. That'll be a good, good first day out. Anyway, I got into the air and I was up there for 50 minutes and then top landed.
Oh wow, fantastic!
Nice one.
Yeah, so I was really
Lovely.
pleased.
Did it surprise you that you got on so well after the break?
It's full stop because I'm a very nervous pilot. I'm very inexperienced, although I've had my license for many years. I had a big break of 12 years, didn't fly at all, rode my motorbike but didn't fly. Did a refresher with Steve about 18 months ago, and I've done a few bits and pieces, and I've just kind of sat on the hill nervously watching everybody else and thinking, I'm not quite there yet. So on Saturday to kind of go there and just think, well, I'll just do a top to bottom, kind of grit your teeth, just get in the air, top to bottom. Not a lot can go wrong. All you're going to do is do what you've done loads of times. And it went really well. So for a first flight, it was a real confidence boost.
God, absolutely.
Good. And Westbury's lovely. It's really, really
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah,
There's
it
lots of
is.
space and it's great. Yeah.
It was a bit of a paraglider soup when I arrived there. There was
Oh,
there
yeah.
was a multicolored cloud hovering over Westbury as I got. That was a little bit off-putting, but actually, I was in amongst that crowd and found, a few people got a little bit close, but I kind of it was probably good for me to appreciate that people can get closer without me needing to panic.
Yeah, yeah, great experience. So, what have you been up to, Helen? We can't hear you at the moment.
We can't hear you.
Now we can't see you.
Ah,
Frightened her off.
sorry, Helen. Didn't want to get you running around all over the place.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
So yes, Saturday morning we went to Bossington. There was no one else there, and it was looking slightly drizzly. So I was just like, oh well, I'll do a bit of ground handling at first to see how it goes. And then the drizzle didn't entirely come through, so I was like, maybe I'll give it one flight. And then I effectively just used it as top landing practice and did kind of laps off the top. So it was good.
Perfect.
Nice.
Perfect. And that was your first session post lockdown.
Yeah, first since June. yeah, June.
Oh, wow.
that is a long time.
That's
That
quite
is a
while,
very
isn't it?
long time.
Yeah.
Ah, great. You should be well pleased. So when are you going out again?
Well, tomorrow if the weather's looking good, but it seems like it changes daily.
That's what weather does.
Yeah.
Better not be good tomorrow because my shoot's all over the sofa.
James, what about you? Was Westbury your first post-lockdown flight?
No, my first flight was Putsborough when it got to the 9th, that day, or was it the 8th, we were allowed. Yeah, everyone, it was a fantastic day at Woolacombe and I missed out. It would have been perfect. It's really light wind, sunny day. I went the following Wednesday to Putsborough, it's northwest. And I've been to Putsborough quite a lot over the Christmas period. So you got the sea thermals and they weren't so active. I went there in the evening and I saw the birds firmling. I thought this is great, get up there really keen. Went along to the end and the wing wobbled a bit. And then I was dropping quite quickly. And I thought, this doesn't normally happen. So came in for a slope landing. And at Putsborough, you've only got sort of a grassy slope and then it's cliff and sea. So thought, I got to come in quick, slope landed, and it must have shifted a bit westerly. And the wind was blowing straight along the slope. And I thought, wow, that all changed really quickly. I was way too complacent. And I thought, right, okay, must be on Baggy Point. And I noticed all the birds were just flying past me, rocketing towards Baggy Point. I couldn't keep up. And so I walked up and it was hard work walking up the slopes. My legs just weren't used to it. And the temptation was to kite the wing up, but the wind was just not the right direction. And I dropped my phone as well as I was walking along. And I had to dump all my gear on the hill thinking it's probably going to blow in this. Go and find my phone, got up to Baggy Point, launched up, beautiful, soared up there with the birds, fantastic. And then I thought, sun's going down, felt a bit lonely, got on radio, there was Ant Moore and someone else flying, Cornborough, having a great time, just letting know what's going on. And then I thought, I'll try and get back again, managed to get back to launch and thought, right, let's try again. I managed to creep over the end of the time, because it must, and I had a bit more of a flight, but when it got to sunset, tried to get back, fumbling along, and then I was going 3 meters a second down fast, and I was not prepared for my landing. I hadn't got enough of approach and overshot the grassy bit and ended up plonking in the brambles and gorse on the slope as the sun was setting, and then spent a beautiful sunset picking everything out, bundling it in and getting back to the cars. It got dark. And I sort of reflected on all this and thought, I don't normally land in the gorse and I'm a bit more switched on. I did have my camera with me, which was different. So I was probably paying attention to that because I'm not used to having a GoPro with me. I had it mouth mounted, and so you can take it out, talk to it, put it back in and mumble to it. And so I thought, right, Woolacombe next. Went to Woolacombe. Everyone turned up. It wasn't what was forecast. And I did 3 tops and bottoms and walked up and thought, I just want to get my legs trained. And no one else took off. Everyone was just showing off their new wings and having a chat. Shouting to Joe, and he said, try out Westbury tomorrow. I think it's on, try an inland site. So went off there and it was amazing. Loads of people, such light winds and thermals. And it's so variable. And had a fantastic time. And it was a real confidence booster.
So you obviously feel comfortable. You're back in the swing of things as well now.
Yeah. I managed to kite the wing up from the slope from Westbury as well. Hopped over the fence and the dip bit past the walkers, and they're going, "Wow, that's great, that's impressive." And I was going, "Oh yeah." So I used to kite surf. I'm used to kiting. I thought, it's not quite right though. It's very different to a kite surfing wing, but. And just back into the swing of things, and want to get going with it really. But my one thing was, if you're so keen to fly, just stay switched on. Things can change quickly. It's not winter, it isn't sunburn, coastal flying.
Yeah.
You need a bit more oomph to keep you up now. So yeah, but different story. I want to learn more about inland flying. So I just got Toby barking. Not helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, we like Toby.
Yeah. Just keen to get going. He's been havoc tonight. He smashed his bowl and typical puppy trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It happens. We've been there. Is it anybody else got a first flight story or wants to ask Phil any further questions?
Got a nearly first flight, but it mentions a Toby, so it could be quite sort of. Because I went to eat yesterday, and it wasn't right at the beginning, and I was just umming and ahhing whether I'd have a go or not. It was too west, and it wouldn't get anywhere. And then after a while, the wind was coming up. Well, it's going round to the west a bit and getting stronger, and then suddenly it all dropped off. So I thought, oh well, I'll give it a bit longer, and then it started to pick up enough for ground handling in a nice direction. It was beautiful ground handling. And while I was doing this, this guy, well, I just packed up, I thought it might be strong enough to have a fly. And this guy came up the hill from the car park carrying a motorcycle helmet. Turns out he's called Toby. Anyway, he was basically asking, is it difficult soaring? And I said, well, are you a paraglider? He said, oh, yes. He said, I've got a BGD Epic wing. And he said, I've got an Epic. So I thought, oh. And I said, oh, where have you come from? And he said, oh, not far. He was on his motorbike, so it was a little bit further than local, I think. But anyway, and then talked to him some more, and it turns out he's also got a paramotor license, and he's done an SIV in Turkey with who's that French good guy? Does some teaching, CO de Blic or something.
Oh, Theo de Blake. Oh, yeah, the acro
anyway,
pilot.
He was asking me, is it difficult soaring? And I said, well, I said, are you a member of a club? He's not even a member of the BHPA.
No. Hope you sent him on his way then.
Yeah, time to go away.
No, for goodness sake, talk to Andrew Pierce. So I said, you know, you need the insurance if nothing else. And the fact that he was, if he hadn't been on his motorbike, he could have easily turned up with his wing and gone straight out there.
Yeah.
And really got into a mess. So that was the most unprepared person I've seen on hill for a long, long time.
From somebody who should be pretty well prepared.
Yeah. And just
sorry,
one other thing,
John.
One other thing to add, Phil, when you landed in the harbour there, it just made me think that, the other day the Avon had a talk about all this sort of thing. And one of the things they were saying about, well, choose a nice site that you know well, and you know, don't push the boundaries on your first flight. And all else fails, go down to the coast because it's going to be nice and easy.
Yeah, Avon had that idea of the coast. It's
but
not
I just thought, seeing
like
your harbour landing, when you go looking for the weather, if you're going on the coast, just have a look and see what the tide times are, because that makes a difference.
Yeah, certainly Avon are putting a lot of effort into coaching at the moment. But certainly there was one day last year when there were a lot of Avon pilots down there, and they've got a lot of very good pilots. But there were some who they thought, oh, this is an easy site, didn't get site briefs, didn't read the site guides. And there's one or two of them had fairly significant collapses. If only they'd asked. There's plenty of us there to spend the time with them and chat and so on. Crazy.
That's a very good point. Generally, people tend to default that, oh, the coast is easy, therefore, you know, let's go to the coast. And yes, it is. You go to Woolacombe, Bossington, fine. But if you're suddenly going to places where there could potentially be high tide and no beach, or even a bit of beach, but you can't get along the beach because you've closed off because of various rock falls and whatever. But as John said, don't assume that the beach is the safe place to go. You know, we've had people go down on the north and south coast and not being able to walk along the coast because they've timed it wrong and the tide's been in.
And the other thing we haven't mentioned is no towns, because I didn't submit them at no town for heat, but I did look at them, and I happened to notice there was formation flying 6 helicopters all week in this big area that missed out Eat, but it covered Ringstead.
Yeah.
And, and did you see Wessex? I think it was one well-known pilot who said that actually the low fly cell actually phoned him and said, look out, helicopters coming your way. Naught to 2,000 feet, and it says they're formation flying and they can't get out your way. So that's a warning.
The one thing we should just sort of touch on briefly, I think, is Easter's coming up, and if we're allowed to fly, which hopefully we are, we might find that the beaches have quite a lot of people on, and if we have the same situation that we had last year, because people are on the beaches and they're spreading out, which they don't normally do, it's starting to limit our landing options, especially high tide. I mean, Eat last year in the middle of the summer was pretty horrendous for trying to land. Spearhead's probably easier, but if the tide is in, you do need to be a bit careful. And of course, a lot of them, especially if it's Easter, if it's early, they'll be moving as well. They won't be sitting. So we do need to try and think about that.
I don't know if anybody's got it, but there's a new group on Telegram, the Exmouth Massive Flying Club or something.
Who's that?
Hang on, if I just look it up, the Exmouth Flying Massive. Now, they added me to it because I was talking about it. I haven't flown it yet, but they are starting to fly Exmouth again.
All right.
Oh, that's what Paul Hook sort of flew there the other day.
Yeah,
that's Foxhole, isn't it?
I know there's 3 or 4 that are going down there, but Exmouth is quite a small beach, especially when the tide's in. I mean, this time of year it's fine, but when it starts getting busy down there and if people have to bottom land on the beach, they are going to have to watch out for people because, like you say, it's not a massive beach when the tide's in. But, like I say, there are people flying it now. And
it's not an official... Is it still registered, do you know? We could find out from the BHPA. Simon, you could, if you rang the BHPA and spoke
as
to or emailed them, as sites officer now, with your new hat on, I can give you an email address of the lady there. She's very helpful, or you could ring and speak to her and just find out if Foxholes, it is Foxholes, isn't it? Whether Foxholes is still registered to the Condors, because normally sites aren't deregistered even if they're not flown, but it hasn't been in the site guide for
years,
25 years probably.
Yeah, but that's where I was looking for it, you see, and I couldn't find it. I thought, well,
no.
Hang on, whose is it then?
No, it might be registered to us. I don't know, but if the BHPA will tell you, they have a log of all the sites and who they're registered to, whether they're currently flown or not.
Well, we used to fly there with the hang gliders, and I mean nobody else. I mean South Devon didn't fly there, so I sort of assumed it would come under our.
Well, I can remember hang gliders going up there when I was knee high to a grasshopper.
That was probably us, yeah.
What's that? So yeah, I can remember and then it all just went quiet because there's somebody moaning about flying over.
Well, there were 2 stories. The first complaint,
that guy's dead now, so
yeah, well, probably, yeah. But the first complaint was that people on the houses behind the green at Foxholes swore blind that we were soaring there to look in their bedroom windows. Right. I mean, why the hell and how the hell was just looking in somebody's bedroom window when you're thrashing across the cliff at cliff height, you know? And the second incident, which put the kibosh on it, was when the editor of the local paper was walking up the zigzag footpath, popped his head up in front of the takeoff as somebody went steaming off in prone about a foot over the railings, and he put his head up and then decided he'd sue anybody who took off there again. So that was the end of it. That was
the other thing that I would just mention as well, and John's comment on NOTAMs reminded me, it's everybody's responsibility to submit a CAN P. Anybody who hasn't done one, just do it. I mean, there's great systems now for doing it by email. I quite like to put in a call because you deal with a proper person. It gives you a reference number and you know it's done. But that is our for those of us who don't yet have electronic conspicuity, that actually does give us a bit of that. So that's another thing to do. Is any more questions for Phil?
Oh yes, just one brief one.
Oh no!
A reminder.
Right.
You are going to send out a telegram, but you were just going to touch on Triscombe.
On what? Sorry.
Triscombe.
Oh,
Triscombe,
Triscombe.
yeah.
Yes, yeah, that's a good point.
Because there was some chat on the group about it.
Yeah, there was chat. My beloved brother was saying that he.
This is being recorded.
I know. My beloved brother. I'm genuine. My beloved brother.
Best friend. Best friend.
My bestest friend. No, I mean he's local to Triscombe, and he flies it. I've flown it years ago. I flew it a bit, and it's not a bad sight. But I felt he gave the impression that, oh yes, everybody can come along and fly it. And I was going to post something, and I thought I don't want to irritate anybody, but I don't think it's suitable site for less experienced pilots. I mean, the hill isn't fantastic. There's a big quarry behind it. It's southwesterly, which is pretty grotty for inland thermaling anyway. Covered in bracken, scrubby trees, and big trees. Most of the landing fields at the base slope away from the hill. There's power lines, phone lines, lines to individual farms and farm buildings. It's fine if it's on your doorstep and you've got nowhere better to go. But if somebody said to me, I'm going to go to Triscombe, I could suggest numerous better places to go. So as I said, I didn't want to upset anybody. I just think really, we took it off our site guide because basically it's just too much hassle and aggravation. I mean, Viv and Lester can tell you they struggled, an awful sink there one day and barely managed to clear the trees and have the side land in amongst the trees, which isn't exactly much fun, Why would you go to a site where you can't get up,
That's not fun.
No, exactly.
The one good thing was we landed in the field next to the tea rooms,
which is now closed.
Yeah, the tea rooms is now gone.
Can I ask a silly question, quick?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I was waiting for your silly question, Ian.
The orographic cloud, is it seasonal? Is it a specific season when it turns up, or is it summer?
I don't think it is. No, it's purely down to the temperature and moisture content. Really, that's all.
Yeah.
Because I mean, all you need is a big hill and shove the air up high enough, and it just condenses. Really, we did have another day at Beer, which wasn't so much orographic. It was just cloud. I don't know, not really fog, more like sea fog, and everybody's boating about in sunshine. And I'm sort of shouting on the radio, keep an eye on it, folks. It's not looking very nice out there. And luckily, Viv had her radio on, and we scooted in and top landed, literally turned and landed as the just rolled in from the sea. And numerous people got caught by it and ended up on the beach in a hurry to get out of the way of the cloud, because that came in at sea level. And that was a sort of fun day, really.
There is if you haven't seen it, there's a YouTube video, and I think if you search Ringstead orographic cloud,
right, yeah,
and that is absolute classic. I have to say, and I'd always slightly associated it more with autumn time, but then just thinking about it, it can be any time, can't it? I mean, it's just the moisture coming out of the air with that slight change.
Doesn't take much. You get on quite small hills. That's the trouble.
Yeah. I'll just a very quick update on Batcombe. I'm hoping that we'll get this blasted clay pigeon shooting tower moved. There's already those who aren't in Condors members and not in the Batcombe group. Please let me know, PM me, and we can sort that out, because it is going to be restricted, particularly at this time of year, because the farmer is commercially breeding at least thousands of pheasants. So it's quite an operation. And anything else for Phil? If not, I'd just like to thank Phil. I do know how much goes into evenings like this, and thank you very much, Phil.
Pleasure.
Good on you, mate.
Hey.
Thanks, Phil.
Hopefully somebody learned something.
Yeah, you've been flying for 50 years.
Yeah, that is a depressing thing. That is so depressing. It really is.
I was going to make a nice comment, then I said, no, Phil wouldn't appreciate a nice comment.
No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't expect anything better, mate.
No, quite. Okay.
Anybody got any suggestions for any other Zoom session?
Yeah.